Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. This episode of Life's Best Medicine is brought to you by the great people at Simply Snackin'. 10 flavors of beef and chicken, humanely raised, grass-fed beef, free-range chicken. And I'm excited about the 10 flavors because I'm heading off to the jungles of Guatemala on a medical trip, and I can have a new flavor every day and not get bored. I'm going to pack them in my suitcase because they're light and easy, and I could bust them out whenever I need to. So if I get stuck somewhere and everyone's eating terrible food, I could have some healthy, great snacks and still stick to my low-carb lifestyle. So thank you, Simply Snackin', for again sponsoring this episode and for bringing these important stories to the people. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. Today I have a special person that I'm excited to share with you all, to share her story. And for her, I haven't heard her whole story. I heard it through her husband. Her husband, Jorge Rodas, is a famous soccer player. He's the Michael Jordan, the fancy guy down there in Guatemala. These guys know him, and he does his own talk show and all that stuff. But Claudia is the one that really impacted me because, her story and what she did for us down there. We had 30 kids that were special needs with cerebral palsy and Down syndrome, autism, all that. And these kids have nothing, and they're very, very poor. And Claudia opened up the zoo. She's the director. She's the big boss at the zoo in Guatemala, which is a fantastic zoo. It's just beautiful. I had a great time. It was my second time going. But these kids, it was just to see the look in their eyes of being happy and content and being able to enjoy that. And Claudia made that possible for us and invited us and was so kind. So Claudia Salazar, welcome. Thank you for joining me. This is really special.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
All the way from Guatemala. So tell people your story, because it hasn't all been roses and easy, and you've had a lot of life challenges, and that's what this podcast is about, is really helping people to really figure out where their foundation is. What do they do in those hard days? So tell people kind of your story. It's kind of funny how you met Jorge, this big star, and he's signing autographs. We could start there, and wherever you think is really important for people to know. You can kind of start there.
Okay. Well, my name is Claudia, and I've been married to Jorge Rodas, a famous soccer player here in Guatemala. And he actually played in the first game of the MLS when the league started. So perhaps you may have heard of him in the States. And so we had been married for close to 20 something years. We have 3 children, and all of us had a normal life here in Guatemala. I had been working at the zoo for around 7 years, and Jorge had finished his career as a soccer player, and he was working in the media, basically as a commentator for different sports shows and that sort of thing, a normal life. Our children were at the time 16, 19, and 14. Our eldest son's name is Gabriel, our middle son's name is Andres, and our youngest daughter's name is Lucy. So those are the ages and the names of our children. We had a pretty normal life like everyone else's, busy at work and driving the kids around to their activities and so on. When right before Father's Day, one day, our middle son, Andres, started complaining about a stomach ache. He had traveled to Florida actually the week prior, and I thought it was a stomach flu of some sort. And I even got mad at him, and I said, okay, I'm taking you to the hospital so they can run some tests on you so that they can give you medication, because I was traveling the Monday after. This was a Sunday. and I want to give you medication. I won't have the time to take you to the doctor, so let's do it quick and fast at the hospital. And we went, and I said, I think what you don't want to do is do all your homework of the week that you had traveled. So this is why you're making this up. I was mad at him, actually. So we get to the hospital, they run some tests on him, and the doctor comes out and she starts to cry. And so we look at her and we ask why, and she says, you need to take your son to the immediate care at the hospital for children with cancer, because your child has cancer. And you know, nothing on earth ever prepares you for that. And so we looked at her and we said, well, we don't believe you, right? And we would like to take our son to a different hospital with his pediatrician, and you know, we're sorry to be rude, but we need, it is just too serious to accept. So so she said, but you have to rush, and you're a doctor, and you're going to understand when I tell you that his white blood cell count was of 345,000, which is way above the average. The average of a normal person is between 5 and 10, let's say, thousand, and this was 345,000. So if we later understood that what was happening was that his white blood cells were reproducing way too fast, and that his blood was thickening, right? And so we went to another hospital, and they ran tests again, but this time his white blood counts was of 600,000. So we had a wonderful doctor who was our friend, and he said, take your child to the hospital for children with cancer, because the doctors there will have had more cases, and they'll have a better experience than what we have here, which was the greatest advice that we got ever, really. So it was very difficult. You know, we were in awe, we were in shock. We couldn't believe that this was happening, not to our middle son. He was very healthy. He was a sports boy. He had never gotten sick of anything. So when something like this hits, you don't believe it. You know, you're in denial, in complete denial that this is happening to you or your family. And as a mother, it's very difficult that for anybody to tell you that your son is sick and that your son has cancer. So we went to the other hospital, and he underwent one treatment of chemo, and he was diagnosed with what is called chronic myeloid leukemia, which is a type of leukemia that is treated with a pill. It was actually a good cancer. And so at the time, they didn't have that medication in Guatemala. So we were very worried about this, and he was only getting worse and worse. His lungs started to collapse in all his vital organs because the blood was thickening, and he could have had a collapse of any of his vital organs because of this situation at any time. So we were in the hospital when at one point we were called to the parents' room, right? And the doctor came to us and said, we need to place a tube in, we need to perform intubation. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, to help him breathe.
And but say goodbye to your son and explain to him what's going to happen. And how can you explain that to your child, you know? And because he said, you know, we don't know how long this process is going to take. It could take a week. It could take 2 months. We don't know. We don't know. And so we got to the room. Oh, but before that, me and my husband had a huge crisis, as a couple, and we had even talked about separation. And at that point in time, we got together, and I said to him, I need you. I need to forgive you for the things that I haven't forgotten. And I need you to forgive me for the things that I've done to you, because I need to have a clean heart for God to hear me, because I am begging him to not take my son. And I think I need a clean heart in order for God to hear me. And he said, there's nothing to forgive. And, we just hugged one another. But I felt in my heart that God wanted me to have a clean heart so that I could ask for things.
Yeah, and I think up to that point, faith wasn't a huge part of your life, right? You were just kind of
No.
going, like a lot of us, just going through life, just living your life one day to another, and you're not really thinking about these things. Then all of a sudden, this gets thrown in your lap. You have marital stuff, and I know one thing that just knowing your family was that you had different religious backgrounds before you got
Sure.
married, right? You were Catholic, and he was more like a Protestant type Christian, and
Sure.
so raising your kids, you said, okay, let's just leave that out of it, and we'll just raise our kids and teach them to be good kids and great kids. And everything I hear from people say you have fantastic children that you raised the proper way, but now all of a sudden you're in a crisis moment.
Yeah, and at that point of the crisis, there's nothing you can really do. You can't ask the doctors to take your hand or your arm or your leg and donate it to your son, so that anything he has will be fixed. Nothing. There's nothing in your control of the situation. And so we knew that we needed to kneel down and ask God, to intervene. And that was the only way. There was no other way. The doctors didn't have the answers. They didn't have certainty of what the situation was going to be like, or any of the outcomes. But anyway, so we did that, and we got to the room and we saw him, but I didn't have the heart to tell him that we didn't know if he was going to come back or not. And all I had the heart to say was, I know you're not breathing properly, and they're going to do a procedure. And when you come back from that procedure, you will be better. Me knowing in my heart that him coming back and being better could have meant for him to be dead, and for him to be with the Lord and elsewhere. You couldn't say that, right? So anyway, we said goodbye, and they intubated him. And he went through a very difficult process. They performed a number of procedures with his kidneys and with his lungs and with every part of his body, because everything was collapsing. 2 days later, we were called into the emergency. He was in intensive care, and we were called into the emergency room in the intensive care, and we thought that he was gone. And to our surprise, they had taken the tube out, and he had responded. And none of the leukemia was there. None of the leukemia was there at that point, because they were able to control it with the medication. So we praised God, and we managed to get out of the hospital on the 11th day. We continued to take Andres for the next 3 months to weekly evaluations, because they needed to monitor him. And on the 3rd month exactly, he began to have a rash on his skin all over his body. But it would come for a few minutes every day, and then it would go away. So we'd take him to the emergency, and he had nothing, and the doctors couldn't see what was going wrong, and so we'd be sent back home. Finally, I took pictures, and they ran another blood count, and his blood count had frozen again to 145,000. So clearly the medication wasn't working anymore. And the doctor called us, and he said, your child needs a bone marrow transplant. It is the only treatment available that could save his life. However, in Guatemala, we do not have bone marrow transplant, and you have 48 hours to find a place where you can have that bone marrow transplant. Otherwise, the count is going to start rising up again, and your child, is not going to make it. I can only offer you palliative care so that he has a good life here until he goes.
Wow.
And so we sat in shock. I don't have enough words to explain to you what that meant. But again, we heard the doctor and we said, you're not talking to me. You're not talking about our son. What you're saying can be right. And we will do anything that it's in our power to fix this, but he can't go. We refuse to accept the diagnosis. We were fortunate enough that I have a Canadian citizenship, and I had managed to give it to my children when they were little, because you can do that as a Canadian citizen. And we decided to contact, through my brother, the Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. And we told them about our case. And we have many things against us. The first thing was the doctor in charge of the program, the bone marrow program, called me up and said, Claudia, I want you to know that even if you bring your child to Canada, and even if we perform the bone marrow transplant, your chance of survival is only 10%. Are you willing to take that chance? Think about your other children. And I responded, if you tell me that he has 1% chance of surviving, I'm going to take that 1% chance. But please, I said, take my child into the program. And the second thing that she said was, remember, and this is a legal thing, when you're a Canadian citizen and you don't live in Canada, or you haven't lived in Canada for a while, you lose your health privileges. So the law says that for the first 3 months, you pay for your hospital or health bills. And then after the third month, then it kicks in and you're covered, right? Because remember, Canada has a universal healthcare system, right? And they pay for everything, but only after 3 months. And so she said, we won't have time to wait for the 3 months for treatment. So you will have to pay the 3 months coverage of whatever treatment is needed to give to your child. Do you know that, will you be able to afford this type of treatment? Again, think about your other children. This can leave you bankrupt, right? And again, I said, I don't, we have family and we have things we can sell. We don't care if we lose everything we have, but we will pay you. And I don't care if I have to sweep the hospital for the rest of my life, to pay for my son's treatment, but please take him. And so she said, okay, you sound convinced, and I will take the first flight that you can. So we started.
And even Claudia, even stepping back, when I talked to Jorge, he was saying that he felt on his heart when he was a professional soccer player that he should donate to the Children's Cancer Hospital. He was doing that all along. Yeah. And because he did that, they were able to, they had a special rule, even though your son was too old to be in the program, that they would make an exception for him because your husband was faithful in doing that. He had he had just done that over all the years. Is that correct?
Yeah, I feel bad about that because he had come to me and said, I'm going to make a monthly donation to the Children's Cancer Hospital here in Guatemala. And I said to him, why are you going to do that? You don't know, how they use the funds and whatever is money out of your pocket every month that you don't know where it's going and so forth. And when we first took Andres the first time, they didn't want to accept him because he was 16 and they had just changed the rule that the limit of the age for admission was 15. So when we begged for the hospital to take him in, they decided that they couldn't turn their backs on a sponsor, right? And Jorge had been a sponsor for a number of years, you know, against all of what I had said. He never listened to me, and I'm glad he didn't, you know. But yes, it's true.
Yeah,
it's
that's
true.
a miracle in itself. So now
Yeah, it was.
you're trying to get Andres to Canada now.
Yeah, so we tried to, any air ambulance would take us from Guatemala to Canada was charging around $50,000. That was the price. And we didn't have $50,000 to take him on an air ambulance from Guatemala to Toronto. So we decided to take a commercial flight. And it was horrible because we didn't know if he was going to need medical care in any of the way, in any part of the way. And thank God we made it, and we made it to Sick Kids. When we got to the hospital, this was heaven. You know, the hospital was amazing. The all the attention, the specialized oncology nurses, the oncology floor for children, the treatments, everything, you know, it was black and white. It was completely different. And in none of the conversations that we had with the medical teams there did the word death ever appeared in any of the conversations we had. In any case, we moved to the hospital. He had a private room in the hospital where I could stay with him. There was a bed for the mother or father to share in the room with the kid. And, you know, everything was so fast that we only took 2 suitcases. With very little clothing, we did not prepare with sweaters or coats or any of the clothing that we would need for the winter time. We flew to Toronto October 28th, 2017. And the weather got colder as the days, you know, went by. And he underwent his first chemo. And after a month, exactly a month after, the doctor came and said, well, his numbers are a lot better now, so he can go home and rest for a week, and then he needs to come back for another round of chemo in preparation for the transplant. So, you know, pack your things and go home. And I looked at the doctor and I said, I'm sorry. I said, we don't have a home. We live in the hospital. And so he said, well, I'm not going to kick you out of the hospital, but it's good for the child's mental health, you know, for his stability. And also he's going to need to come back in a week. And so it would be good. And it's also costing you $2,000 per day. So if you stay, you're going to add up to that horrible bill you're accumulating, right? And so I said, let me see what I can do. So I went down the stairs. I was doing laundry in the laundry facility of the hospital where we were allowed to do that. And I prayed. And I said, you know, dear Lord, you know what we're going through. We're alone in this hospital, alone in Toronto. We don't have a home to go to. We don't have clothing. It's -5 degrees outside. My son has lost his hair. He's lost 40 pounds. He's weak. And I need a place to stay for him and I. Please help me. I don't have to explain to you further, you know, what we're going through. And I went upstairs to the 8th floor, and the phone rang. And when I picked up, they said, Claudia, it's so-and-so from the Ronald McDonald House in Toronto. We have a room for you and your son. We're waiting for you here. And we cried, Brian, because I had called the Ronald McDonald House when I was told that in the morning, and they said, we're sorry, we're full, we don't have a room for you. You know, look elsewhere, look into a hotel room, whatever. And we didn't want to spend any money really, because our bill was huge. And so anyway, so God started to perform miracles for us, huge miracles for us. You know, anything we needed, we were given with abundance, Brian. When we got to the house was beautiful. The house was comfy. The house had anything you would need. Pantries full of shampoo, toothpaste, towels. The room was beautiful, better than any hotel room you could have asked for, you know. They had children's programs, they had TV, they had coffee stations, they had hot chocolate for the child. There was Wi-Fi in our room so that we could communicate with our family. It's endless. I could speak for an hour of all the good things that we found at the Ronald McDonald House. But that was our home, and it became our home for 10 months, Brian. When I went and I asked how much is the Ronald McDonald House? They said, oh, it's $15 per day. It's nothing. And then she said, but because Andres is in the oncology floor, the oncologists, the doctors, they donate $10 of the $15 that you are asked to pay. So you'll be paying $5 per day. $5 per day. You know, I don't have to tell you, you know, how we felt when we were given those numbers. Continued living at the Ronald McDonald House, and we went for the second cycle of chemo. And when we finished that cycle, Andres needed a transplant donator. Is that the correct
Yes,
word?
correct. Yes. Someone who could donate.
Someone who could donate the bone marrow. And there is a bone marrow bank in North America, and it's got 30 million subscribers, 30 million people in that base, in that database. And among the 30 million people, there wasn't one match for Andres.
Wow.
So that was complicated because he needed a donator, right? A donor. And so they had sent tests for the family to see if any of his siblings were matches. The statistic says that only 1 in 4 it's a match. So there was only 25% chances of his brother and sister that they could be a match, right? So Andres's birthday is December 1st, and on November 30th, on the eve before his birthday, his doctor came into the room, and Andres, and he said, Andres, I have a birthday present for you. And he said, really, what is it? Because we were really worried that we were not going to find a donor, you know, and that all of this effort was what the doctor had told me that I had to worry about. That was the 10% chance, right?
Yes.
All of these things needed to happen in order for him to get better. It was as if someone said, okay, there is a way, but you need to go, and all of the lights along the way need to turn green. If one of them turns red, then there's no salvation, right? Then there's no healing. And so this was it. This was another light that we needed to pass. And so he said, I have a birthday present for you. And he said, yes, what is it, doctor? And he said, your brother, Andres. Your brother is a full match for you, and he will be your donor for your bone marrow transplant. And again, we cried and we kneeled down and thanked God, because the chances were slim, Brian. They were so slim. But we prayed. I swear to God, we prayed every day, asking for every miracle and asking that every light that we needed to cross was green, you know. Gabriel was here at university. He was in his second year of engineering, industrial engineering, when he got the call and the doctor said to him, Gabriel, you are the full match of your brother, and you can be the donor only if you want, you know, and if you don't want, it's okay, and we won't tell your parents. But Gabriel started crying and he said, of course, you know, when do I need to go?
Wow.
And so Gabriel he had just finished his term. He packed his things and he left, and no one gave him a goodbye party, a farewell party, because he just took off, you know. And I think it was very noble of him to have done that, you know, without an interest of any kind. He just took off and left. He knew he was needed and he left, right? So Christmas went by. He had his third round of chemo, and they did all the tests on Gabriel, and everything was perfect for the transplant. In order for him to get a transplant, when you get a bone marrow transplant, they need to erase your immune system. So your immune system doesn't reject the new bone marrow, right? And it's a huge chemo. It's actually very hard on the body. And the person is put on isolation so that nothing, no virus of any kind, nothing.
You pretty much destroyed your entire immune system. You have no immune system. It's shot. Yeah,
exactly. It's shot, and so anything, you could die not of cancer and not of the transplant, but because a bug of any kind, you know, got into your body and you had no way to fight it, right? So on the day, one day before the transplant, they needed to extract Gabriel's cells so that they could be placed into Andres the next day. So I had one child in one hospital, Andres, with his immune system wiped off, right? And waiting for his new bone marrow. And Gabriel in a different hospital where he was hooked to a machine for 8 hours. They would have a catheter put into one arm, extract his blood, extract all the cells that we needed, and then place the rest of the blood back into his body. The blood from his body was all the blood of his body went through the machine 6 times during the day. And well, you're a doctor, you know that is a procedure that you need to be careful about. When you're supposed to donate 10% of the amount of cells that you have that day. And Gabriel had 39 million cells that day, so he could only donate 3.9 million cells. However, Andres needed 5 million cells. So I asked, what do we do then? And they said, well, he'll need to go back tomorrow. And that was another day of risk, right? For Andres and for Gabriel. So we finished the day and the nurse said, okay, we're gonna go count how many cells we were able to extract from you and tell you what time you need to be here tomorrow. And we sat down and we were a bit disappointed, you know, we needed a larger number. And the nurse came back crying. And she said, these were her exact words. And she said, Gabriel, there is a God, because you donated 5.2 million cells today.
Wow.
So there was no need for you to come back again. So again, we cried and we knelt down and we thank God that this was another green light in our way, right?
Wow.
he performed. God performed. We asked and he performed. We surrendered and he gave us everything we needed, Brian. Everything we needed. We couldn't have asked for a better place. We couldn't have asked for a better nurse. You know, the nurse was on holidays and this was the best nurse ever, you know, that we got that day. And she had only come that day to do this on Gabriel. They didn't assign her to anybody else. They assigned her to Gabriel. So we saw the hand of God all along the way. The very next day, Andres went back to, Andres was ready to receive his cells. And they had told us that Gabriel was going to feel sick, like he had the flu for about a week and, you know, all the symptoms. And Gabriel got up, had breakfast, and went to see how the cells got into his brother the very next day in the form of a transfusion. And from then on, the story only got better every day, you know. All his numbers were perfect every day, every day. You're supposed to be in isolation for about 20 days for your bone marrow to get into your body and for it to start growing again, right? And Andres's bone marrow was ready on day 13th, which was amazing.
Yeah.
He did outstanding every single day. But every single day, Brian, we pray to God and we thank God for what we were given. It wasn't peaches and it wasn't summer and it wasn't the greatest time. It was the hardest time of our life. But every day we thank God because what we got every day was amazing. It was truly amazing. His process got better and better. And what I can tell you now is that at 100% of his checkups from that day on have been perfect. And the doctor's report today is he's unremarkable is the word the doctor uses every time he describes the process. Unremarkable.
Yeah, unremarkable is where you want to be. You don't be the outlier that, you know, everything's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's Andres, you know. We had other miracles happening all throughout. I was the director of the zoo, and when this happened, I went to my boss and I said, well, I can leave you my letter of resignation. You know, I have to go. I have no choice. And I don't know how this is going to turn out. And my boss is a very particular man, very cold and very little empathetic. Let's put it that way. And so I figured, you know, well, this is it. And my cycle ended and I have to go. But I was clear on what I needed to do. And this cold man turned to me and said, you go, get your child better, and we will wait for you here. And they waited and they paid me every month of my salary during all the time that I was with Andres in Canada.
Wow.
And that was another gift from God, because I don't know many people that could have done that for me or anybody in a job, you know, from that perspective. So I came back. After he was better, I was able to get an apartment for the children in Canada. And amazing things started to happen to Gabriel. You know, we went to a golf tournament and to tell our testimony, and this was for the Ronald McDonald House, when a man shows up and says, Gabriel, I heard of what you did for your brother, and here's my card if you need a job. And Gabriel thanked him, and he was the vice president of Scotiabank in Canada. And later on, he called Gabriel to give him a position for a summer job, you know, But this was amazing too, because most kids would get, summer jobs selling ice cream or working at the stores and, doing the summer thing. And Gabriel was at a bank, earning more decent money than perhaps the other kids. Because this was also a gift. And I believe that God saw his heart and he will forever be blessed. We went to university and he applied for university in Canada and he got accepted to the 3 universities he applied to. The 3 of them accepted him and he got his pick. He is attending Ryerson University now and he's almost finished actually his new career. He dropped his engineering and he started again. And a lot of amazing things have happened to him, but God saw his heart, and he's doing really well in Canada now. I came back to Guatemala to continue working at the zoo because now we needed to pay the bills, right? And I came back in August, and in October, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that came as a shock too, because I thought we had finished dealing with cancer. And cancer for your son is one thing, and cancer for you, for your own, is another thing, right? But you know what? I figured that nothing could have been worse than what Andres had lived. So my case was stage 2 breast cancer, and I needed to undergo some tests to see if I needed chemo or if it had, gone into other organs or places. I'm gonna tell you that I was really lucky because mine was found in time, and I had to undergo 18 sessions of radiation, and they did a lymph node surgery as well, and my lymph nodes weren't taken. And now I only take hormonal medication at this moment, and I have to do so for the next 5 years, which is nothing really compared to everything else that we lived. And in my last checkup, I'm doing fine. Everything's clean and everything's clear. But and if you ask me, that's our story. Life certainly changed us, but it changed us for the good. At the worst time ever, it changed us for the good. God was present in every time. And from the time that we said that we needed him in our lives and we put him first, from that day on, every single thing got better.
Yeah, and I could see that just talking to Jorge. So people who don't know, Jorge's this big macho dude, right? I met him in a restaurant. We were sitting there talking. I'm like, he's a good-looking guy and big studly guy, bunch of muscles and all that. But then he started telling his story, and I was like, wow, that is, going from the peak of being the star. Really, these guys can get away with anything, probably doing bad stuff they shouldn't be doing. They're untouchable. Like we see a lot of the athletes in the United States where everything just gets handed to them and they kind of just go through life. And I think Jorge was kind of living that way. And then he talked about when Andres got sick and how it affected him. Like he's on his knees praying for the first time in his adult life, at least. And, just realizing you can have everything and it can be taken away in a second. Like all that mattered was your family, your son. And you start realizing, he said, look, as a father, I was scared to death, but I felt a peace that I never felt before. And that's something. I started this podcast because I would talk about faith and people would pick on me and get upset because I'm talking about faith. And I said, well, that's how I deal with life. And so it's such a hard concept for people to understand and for him to go through that and understand from his perspective, you're away with your family and he's at home in Guatemala and he can't be there, and then he had a tragedy also that happened when he finally got to come. So maybe you could tell people about that a little bit too.
Yeah, when he managed to go visit, because he had to stay here and work and gather all the money we could get again to pay that hospital bill of the first 3 months. And he managed to go visit us after I was in Canada for the second time during my treatment. And this was the first time we had spent together in 2 years almost.
Wow.
And we were there, and he said he was going to be there for a few days only, and he changed his flight then in the evening, and he said, I'm going to stay for a couple more days. I'm enjoying my kids and my family so much, I don't want to go back just yet. And he changed his flight, and then at 2 a.m. in the morning, he got a phone call that his father had passed away. So he boarded the first plane he could, and he came back to Guatemala for his father's funeral, and that hit him really hard. It's been a very difficult past 3 years now, because we've been through so much. Sometimes you think all these stories happen to other people, but not to you, right?
Yeah.
And when they happen to you, what is there left to do other than to ask God's mercy? God is the only answer. And I don't mean to sound religious. I don't, I can tell you what I lived, and I can tell you what I was given. I can tell you, that I faced death, the death of my son, and I truly asked God not to take him. He opened all the doors. That was not what was meant to happen. But I understood that only when I had faith, but true faith. A lot of us say, no, I believe in God, and no, I pray every day. But it's about living it. It's about trusting. That is the word. You have to trust in God 100%, that everything that's going to happen, He has control of. It's not some cliche that that you read in Facebook or Instagram or any of the pastors perhaps preaching in anything. It's not about that. I'm telling you from a living story that's what happened. We were giving miracles the minute we believed and we trusted with our heart.
Yeah, and it's easier said than done, right? When you say, hey, my child's life is in your hands. It's you. Yeah. I don't have control over this. Or, and you think like from Jorge's perspective in Guatemala, he can walk in and they know who he is. In Canada, he doesn't have that. A lot of people aren't going to know who he is or who you are, and the miracles. And, the other miracle too, there was another huge story that Jorge was saying is about a lady at the school just said, hey, I want to give you some money to help out. And it was just kind of a random thing. Maybe you can expound on that a little bit.
Yeah. Jorge worked at the time as a sports coordinator for a school. And they all knew about Andres's case, and they were all very empathetic with him, because it is really horrible. And one day he was at the entrance of the school when this couple came, and they parked their car, and they came and they said, we had been saving for a long time because we have never taken a vacation together. But God put in our heart that we should give you this money that we had saved because we know you need it. And they handed him an envelope with all of their savings to help us with the hospital bill of Andres. We also got a phone call. Jorge got a phone call of another lady one night, and she said that she had gone through a similar situation. And she said, she asked how Andres was. She asked about his condition and what what we were expecting. And then she said, I'm going to make a donation. Please give me your bank bank account number, and so forth. And the next day we received this huge donation. No one from our family, or no one from the closer circle had given us so much money than this lady. And we don't know who she is. We've never met her. We don't know who she is. And in every penny we got from people we don't even know, we needed, in order to pay for the Ronald McDonald House, which was little, but then also to pay for the hospital bill that accumulated for the first 3 months that we were there. After 3 months, the Canadian government picked up the bill and everything is well now, but the first 3 months were on our own, right? And all that we needed. And you know what? And every need was covered. It was as if God was our credit card, and everything that we needed to pay was paid for one way or another. Financially, we didn't need any money, because all the money we needed, we were given from people we didn't know, from people we never expected,
And that renews your faith in humanity and people helping each other, right? And when they say, look, I'll help. I mean, what can I do? And, your needs are met. And I've heard story after story like this. And this is why when I talk about faith, it's so hard, because people who don't get it, they just don't get it. They just don't see it the way we see it. Like us crossing paths in Guatemala, the way it all works out, right? And, I mean, I think it's just amazing how lives intersect for a reason. And I think your story will speak to a lot of people who are going through this right now and going through the, life stress. And, a lot of people are living your pre-Andres getting sick life. Is like, there's no care in the world. You just go and you just keep living. You're paying your bills, fight with your husband. You got marital stuff going on. And then all of a sudden you figure out what really matters, loving each other and caring for each other and being there and saying, look, if it's a 1% chance, I'll take it because it's my child. I think all of us would rather have cancer ourselves and have our kids be sick.
Exactly. We were living, like you said, it was a normal life of anybody, any family anywhere in the world.
But again, it's not normal. You didn't have a normal life because your husband, when you want to have dinner with your husband, people would come up and want his autograph and they want to talk to him, and you didn't have privacy the way that most of us do. Right. So that's one of those things too.
But you know what? When he was famous, he's well known everywhere, and that was fine. We got used to his fame and him speaking about soccer all the time and all of that. But again, we'd never thought that any of this would happen to us. These things don't happen to you. They happen to other people, right? Not to you.
Yeah.
But they do. And one of the things that we learned too was that bad things happen to good people, Brian. But how you deal with those bad things, and as long as you understand that God is in control all the time, and that you trust that God is in control all the time, is key to come out of the worst situation, Yeah, and that is hard. That is hard to believe.
Yeah, and that's a critical message for people right now, because a lot of people think things are never going to get better. All people are bad. Everyone's fighting with each other. Everyone hates each other because of their race or sexual preference, whatever. And I think the more we're around good people, you realize there are a lot of good people. That's why I'm biased that way. Even though I see a lot of bad in the world, I see a lot of great people like you, letting those kids come in. I mean, that was a day I will never forget, seeing those kids smiling. I got to play with the lemurs and they climbed all over us. And Robert had a change in his life, I think, based on spending time with kids and seeing what his dad's foundation is doing down there. And I think, I love it because a lot of the stuff we're talking about, it's the same I feel. I don't like to donate to big groups. I don't know where the money's going, right? And you're kind of the same. I like to see people get helped right away, and you see that where that money's going, not for someone to fly first class and have a good life while other people are suffering. And I think, the fact that your husband still donated and did that, and that ended up paying off in the end, because sometimes we just do stuff, say, I don't know why I'm doing that. Like people who gave you money, they just say, I feel like I should do that. I feel like that's where I should go. And I think in my life, I've seen the same, where I'm supposed to go down a certain path. Like, doesn't make sense, but okay, if I'm supposed to go down that path, I'll go down that path.
But you know what? Another lesson in all the story, another of the lessons we learned was that we were not caring enough. We saw people that had never met us come to us and pray for us, or bring a cup of coffee to the hospital when we were there with Andres intubated, or bring us a Bible, a verse of any kind, a word of some sort, money if you want. But I asked myself, I have never done this for anybody, and people that I don't know did it for me, and I had to question myself. Am I being selfish? I think I've been selfish all of my life. As long as I was okay, it didn't matter, what else was happening in the world. And it was a huge lesson of humility, because now we are more open-hearted with people and listening to people. It's as if God wanted us to open our hearts and to go through this, because now we can give words of strength to people who go through situations like this. Now we know what someone feels. Now we know which doctor you can go to if you think your child is sick, or if you think you are sick of cancer. And so it's given us so many more blessings. Ironically, it's as if a meteor came into our house and it all changed, but it all changed for the better, Brian.
Yeah, and that's it. You go through these bad things and people say, well, if there's God, why do these bad things happen? Well, because all the good that came out of it, forgiving your husband, right? Forgiving, these things, forgiveness, grace, kindness, peace, patience, all these things that we talk about, all these fruits of the spirit, things that are so esoteric to people that it doesn't make sense until you have to go through that, until you have to receive grace, until you have to be humbled. Someone who's very proud being humbled and realize I have to ask for help for the first time. And I had to go through things like that in my life. We think, oh my goodness, I'm asking for help. I want to help people. I don't want to be helped. It's harder on that end sometimes,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have been dealt a bad card, or someone died that they loved. And I remember your husband saying that. He said, I have faith in God no matter what, whether he takes my son home or not. I understand, and I have peace with that. And to be able to do that with your own kids, that is just, I'm not at that point in my life right now. I think it's really hard. You want to stand in the gap and help, and to give up power and control is very difficult. I'd rather drive the motorcycle than be on the back and let someone else drive, unless I trust them with all my life, right?
Yeah. But it's about letting go and let God take control of your life. And that's something we didn't know how to do. We did.
Did you ever have a time where you were angry, bitter with God, and fought with him and said, look, this is not fair, not right?
At the beginning, when we were told the news, then you ask yourself, why is it my child and not, that evil person that is out killing somebody? And why is it not the thief that you see on the street? Or why is that happening to me? And not to the people that deserve to get punished, for example. It's a complicated angle. But then you learn that you're supposed to go through this, because there are huge lessons for you and huge testimonies that you must give to people, and the huge testimony is you have to trust and you have to let go. You have to let go of the control you want to have over things, because the control is not in your hands, it's in God's hands. And understanding that is not easy when you only see it from outside, or when nothing terrible like this has happened to you. But even if it hasn't, if you can understand that God is the only way, and that trusting that the minute you trust God, things get better. Then I wish I knew this lesson, way before. And but I learned it, and I'm sure God had a purpose for it, and that's why we're talking today.
Yeah, and I see your kindness and your loving for other people and all those things. And I'm sure you were like that before, but I think going through something like this makes you having a new appreciation. Whenever I get back from Guatemala, I have a new appreciation of my family and my kids and all that. And so especially now, I think your story really impacted me to just step back and look, because a lot of us think, oh, that movie star, that football player, basketball player, whatever, they have it all, they don't have to worry. But you look at their lives, a lot of times it's a total disaster. They might have the money, they have the finances, but they have no substance. They have no one that they love and that they care about. And who knows? Andres doesn't get sick, what happens to your marriage? Yeah, Andres doesn't get sick, what happens to their future, in Guatemala? And so I think it's just, all these paths, all these things happen. I think sometimes stepping back, and I think being able to say, okay, things aren't perfect now, but there's a plan, and I'm gonna have faith through this, and I'm gonna take another step. I'm not just gonna lay down and say it's over, because you could have said, no, we're not going to pay all this money. It's ridiculous. It's and it could have turned out the other way too. He could have not survived, but you will always know you did the right thing. And you were willing to sacrifice for your kids. A lot of people aren't willing to do that.
I had the opportunity of attending a support group in Toronto when I was there. And there was a group of caregivers, people who had cancer patients, whether that be their husbands, parents, siblings, children. And a lot of their patients were in their terminal stages. And when I got to the group, it was very hard for me because my child had survived, right? And so they were all talking about how difficult it was to say goodbye to their loved ones in through the cancer treatments and so on. And so one of the things I said at one of the meetings was that as a caregiver, when I was the caregiver, I could have gone every day thinking, oh, I'm not doing enough, or I am doing too much, or whatever. But the point is that whenever it's God's time for your loved ones, you can say that you did your best and that you have given everything in order to save this person's life, or in order to make this person's life better. And that's what true love is all about. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but the point is that was another of the huge lessons. Give, endlessly, limitlessly, just give.
Yeah, absolutely. Just that cup of coffee, that being kind to someone, just being nice, all those things. It doesn't cost you a lot just to be kind, or to call someone that you're thinking about. We're all negligent in that area. And I think that's really important for us, just to be tuned in and say, okay, what can I do to help that person who's struggling, rather than just saying, oh, it's tough luck. They had tough luck. So you say, well, how can I help them? What can I do? What resources do I have? What phone call can I make? Those kind of things, helping someone go through life and all that. And through all this, what do you think is life's best medicine? What's something you learned that you say, look, guys, kids, whatever, that you want to pass on to someone if you're on your deathbed, and say, okay, what really matters? What's important in life?
I think that you need to understand, or your best medicine in life is to have faith, because then you'll know that you'll go through life not being alone in any of the situations, and you'll understand that even if they're difficult sometimes, they all have a purpose and they won't last forever, because God is taking you through, or God is working behind the scenes for you. But God will always be there for you. God will always be my best medicine. I could have never gone through. I can't imagine what someone who doesn't believe in God goes through when they go through a situation like this. What do you hold on to? What do you do if you don't have God in your life? So to me, that is one, and the other is to to give to your family, to your community, and to whomever you can endlessly, it will all come back to you. That is one of the blessings will come back to you. You know, the more you give, the more blessed you will be. So it's an opportunity to give to someone else. It's an opportunity to be blessed yourself. So give. Yeah.
I'll give you an amen. I can't use any more wisdom than that. It's for what you've been through and where you're going and your joy and your peace. It's sent you just feel it from you, right? When people are around you. And I think that's so important, and that you're a caregiver and you're a healer, really. Like, you heal other people around you. And I think that's really critical. That's what we all hope to be. So, Claudia, it is such an honor to have you on. And I'm going to try to drag Andres on and tell his side of the story. I would love that.
Oh, I'd love to.
If we can drag him in to see, because as a young guy who has everything going, and then you get diagnosed with cancer, and what happens to your brain, what happens to your hope, and all those kind of things. And I know faith wasn't a huge part of your family until this happened. And now there's a rocking of the foundation, and your foundation's on the rock now, right? You get it.
Right.
And those next things you go through, go, okay, my son was dying of cancer. This is not that big of a deal. I think life is a lot of this is about perspective. So thank you so much for joining me, and be blessed. Thanks for your time, because I know you're busy and have a lot going on. And so, everyone, thank you for listening. This is such important stuff. This is why we do it. This is why we go to Guatemala. This is why we reach out to other people. Stories like this. And if I told you the story, it wouldn't mean anything. You have to hear it directly from the person who's dealt with this and going through life struggles and having everything taken away, and being on the verge of losing your son and your own life. This is the thing. It's hard because as a doctor, I see people take their last breath. I see people that have to deal with their mortality, and it's really tough because none of us want to talk about this kind of stuff. We don't want to hear about it because it's too difficult. But take a breath and think about it. Think about what really matters, what really is important. Is it getting the new car, having the nicest watch, the nicest house on the neighborhood, or is it about relationship? And I think ultimately that's what we all have to come to those terms. So, Claudia, again, thank you. Be blessed. Have a great weekend with your great family, and
thank you,
we'll be talking soon. I'm going to get back to the zoo again.
You're welcome. This is your home anytime you want to come. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. God bless you.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify, or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.